Alright, we're back to go ahead and finish this Huawei Ascend Plus. We have our new piece of glass here. We need to go ahead and basically tape off the front of the device and make sure that we get enough adhesive around the sides and the front and bottom of the device to make sure we get a nice good seal. We're using a couple different sizes of tape. You can use any size of tape you'd like. I'll use a 5-3 and possibly a 1.5 or a 1 millimeter for the sides of the device. So we're going to start with the wider tape down here at the bottom. We're just going to trim up the sides of the tape to make it fit into the rounded edges of the phone's frame. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but my goal is to get as much adhesion from the screen onto the frame as possible. That way it doesn't go ahead and pull back up. Now I find it much easier to go ahead and cut the tape piece in half rather than try to round both of the edges to be the exact fit of the device. It's a little bit tricky to do. So pull back just a little bit here, and then we'll cut the opposite side into the rounded shape and then meet in the middle. Now that we have our edge rounded here, we can go ahead and just put it onto the device. We'll just measure and cut it to fit so it doesn't overlap on top of the piece of tape that we have already put onto the frame. Now one of the goals and things you should try to do is to not touch the display, the LCD as you're doing this. The more fingerprints, the harder it is to clean. So do your best to not touch it or get any glue or anything onto the actual display itself. So just cut a little triangle to fit onto the side of the device. Where the buttons are kind of has an indentation, so we don't want to cover that up. We don't want any tape to overlap that, so we'll cut separate pieces of tape to go inside of that. Just cutting little triangles to fit onto the device, just right around that indentation. Make sure the tape doesn't go up the side of the device or overlap on top of any other pieces of tape. Definitely want to avoid any high spots. Make sure the tape doesn't go up the side of the device or overlap on top of any other pieces of tape. Definitely want to avoid any high spots. Now we don't want this to overlap on top of the LCD, so make sure you cut it just to the bottom of the frame of the phone. Do the same thing for the opposite side. The trick is when taping up the top of the phone, make sure you don't cover up any of the holes here at the front, any of the front-facing camera, ribbon cable slots, the proximity sensor. Doing so could cause damage to the phone when you try to reassemble it, or portions of the phone not to function properly anymore. Now you don't have to get into all the little tiny slots like I'm doing, but one of the goals is to make sure you get as much adhesion onto the frame as possible. You'll get a much longer lasting seal of the phone. You won't have any issues with trying to pull up. Now I'm using a much thinner tape here. I believe this is a 1.5 or a 1mm 3M tape. We'll use our dental pick here to go ahead and just push the tape down. Get it nice and adhered to the phone. Make sure we lay it down just right next to the portion of the frame where it starts to come up. Go ahead and do the opposite side. Let's put a little piece right at top, this portion where the cable, ribbon cable will go through. Do it right here at the bottom of the frame of the phone, making sure not to cover up any of the holes or ports here as well. It's going to take some time to make sure we clean up the LCD of the phone, make sure there's no fingerprints on it. I'm just using a microfiber cloth here in my finger. If you can use some rounded kind of cleaning strokes, and then once you get all the fingerprints removed, you can go straight down. It seems like this is one of the best ways to remove the dust off the device. Next step is to go ahead and remove all the backing off of the double-sided tape. Now if the backing wants to pull up with the tape itself, just push down on the edges of the tape itself, get some good adhesion on there, then go ahead and pry the backing off. If you're using clear tape, it seems like that can be a little bit trickier to get the back to pop off cleanly. The black 3M double-sided tape seems to be a little bit easier. We're getting pretty close to being ready to put the frame back onto, or the glass back onto the phone. Alright, all the adhesive ready to go. Just one last check on the LCD. Kind of blow it off of any dust that may have accumulated while you're removing the tape. You can give it a wipe. We want to be careful not to put the microfiber cloth on the tape though, after cleaning it after you remove the backing. Alright, our next step is to put the ribbon cable through the top portion. Want to make sure that goes all the way through. It doesn't kink or bend. So make sure it gets nice and pushed all the way through. We're going to start the top corners, insert those first, and then kind of hinge it down towards the bottom. Use our thumbs to go ahead and press in the corners, then work away at the sides of the phone. Kind of pressing down as we go. Perfect. We got some nice adhesion happening. Kind of check and make sure that nothing's trying to lift. Alright, the next step is to go ahead and put in the earpiece speaker. It just slips right back into the slot, making sure the gold contacts are facing outwards. We'll go ahead and put our proximity sensor back in. Go ahead and put our screw back into the proximity sensor plate here. Making sure that the little pins or posts that it's supposed to sit on are lined up, and you'll see it kind of snap back into place before we put that screw in. Next up is to go ahead and put our logic board back in. We want to put the ribbon cable for the proximity sensor through the board, and then kind of line it back up. You'll see that the screw holes will kind of line back up, and you'll want to kind of clip it back into place. You'll feel it kind of snap right back in. You may have to wiggle it a little bit here. Make sure the ribbon cables come out from underneath the board before you start snapping it back into place. May take a little bit of movement to get it back in. Now, you don't want to put a ton of force onto this to get it to kind of clip back into place. We'll just try to kind of pry against it a little bit so we can get the first clip in. Alright, we can go ahead and start putting our connections back on. So I'm going to line them up a little bit and give them a decent amount of push to get them to connect back on. Kind of feel them clip together, but you don't want to push too hard. If you misalign them, it can bend the pins, and that could ruin the connection. I'm going to go ahead and pop on our back. Now you can test it here without putting the back on if you want to push the battery up against it and power it on this way. It is actually easier to put the back onto the phone. Just kind of start at the top and work your way down. So kind of like a door would close, top on, clip in place, and then push down on the sides. You'll feel it snap right back together. Now before I put all the screws in, I'm just going to make sure the device is going to power on for us and that our connections are functioning properly. Perfect, we do have power on the device. It's booting, that's a good sign. Let's go ahead and test touch function here real fast. Perfect, it looks like it's responding to us. Give it a second here to boot up a little bit. While we wait for that to happen, we can go ahead and put our screws in the back. We're going to put all of them back in. Now we want to make sure that these are snug, but you don't have to tighten them all the way down to the point where they don't turn anymore. This is a plastic phone. You can strip out the screw holes. So make sure they're nice and snug, but don't over tighten them. Just a few more screws to go. Alright, so let's kind of double check the touch here. Just make sure that it wasn't a fluke that was working in the one spot. It definitely seems like it's working properly for us. Next step is just go ahead and snap the battery cover back on the phone. And that is the screen replacement on this Huawei phone. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them down in the comments. We do my best to answer them for you. If you found the video useful, go ahead and hit the like button. If you want to see any future phone videos, I do a couple a month. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next video.